All right, welcome everyone to another Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord Q&A. Tonight's guest is Peter Limberg from thestoa.ca. Thank you for Peter for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
That's great. Our communities, we've been sort of watching a lot of our members go on your events. I think probably some of your members are members here. I think we have quite a bit of overlap in what we're doing in our two communities. So it's great to have you here, and hopefully this can be the start of a number of collaborations between our two groups.
Mm.
So
And man, sounds good. And here I'm going to ask you guys some questions too, because I'm here to learn as
yeah,
well.
absolutely. Yeah. Feel free to throw them out whenever you'd like. Well, let me start off though by asking you a question. Not everybody here is familiar with you. Can you tell us about yourself? What was your journey? What brought you to this point to starting the Stoa?
Mm-hmm. All right, this is a good question, and I'll try to answer it in a way that ties in how I know John as well,
Great.
and our work together. Um, yeah, so I guess I was in the education industry, learning and development, and as a career, and there was a hunger for philosophy, to philosophize. I was a student at the University of Toronto in philosophy. I'm 35 right now, so it's a while ago. But I did take meditation classes with John, the old school meditation classes at the Multi Faith Center, which was quite a treat. And that's when I first met him. Um, and so, well, I can't even remember now, like maybe 3 4 years ago, I had that itch, that philosophical itch. So I started these groups. One of them being Stoicism Toronto, which quickly became one of the largest Stoic groups in the world. And I'm a practicing Stoic, or at least I like to think I am. And the other group was another philosophical group um, called Intellectual Explorers Club at the time. And through both of these groups, I got some reputation in these sort of like sense making game beat type circles because I was writing about the culture war and the Medic tribe and stuff like that. Invited John to my podcast. First time I seen him or spoke to him in a while. When we got lunch, and I told him about all these kind of conversational modalities that I've been engaging in, like circling and whatnot. And he just got so excited about it because there's an intuition there that there was something there. And so went on a research project, started researching a lot of these kind of conversational modalities like circling, insight dialogue, restorative circles, empty circles. I introduced John to a lot of players in this space, like Guy,
Great.
and then they just freaking hit it off. So that's kind of how I know John. And before COVID happened, we were a part of a bi-weekly circling group here in Toronto with Taylor from
Yeah.
Authentic Relating. I think he was on this show. So that's how I know John. And so when COVID happened, my philosophy groups, I couldn't meet in person anymore because you couldn't meet due to social distancing. And I always had a desire to, for a long while now, to open up a philosophical coffee shop to house these groups. So a wisdom gym, ecology of practices could be done in a physical location. So I'm like, what, fuck it, let's just launch this online. So I launched the Stoa, which is basically combining that more jazzy philosophical group, the Intellectual Sports Club, and the Stoicism in Toronto. I combined them together, called it the Stoa, and it became an online event space. Um, we have something like a ecology of practice in our wisdom gym that's emerging, and we have, I call it a communal podcast. This is basically like this. You interview someone, and then the collective intelligence asks questions to the speaker, which is great, by the way, because it saves you from doing research on your speakers. You can just get everyone else to do it. I love the communal podcasting much better. Um, yeah, it's been going. It's been growing. There's a lot of excitement and buzz around it. I'm sure there's more I can say on it, but ultimately, I don't really know what it is or where it's going either. Too, which kind of makes it a little bit exciting.
So you've described yourself as a Stoic. So maybe just for those who don't know, what's a brief description of Stoicism?
Stoics hate describing themselves, or at least good Stoics do. Or they hate describing Stoicism. But I'll do it. Yeah, there's something about Epictetus. I'll like this. Like Epictetus, he was one of the Stoics. He says, "Explain your philosophy, embody it." I just love that, and so I hate talking about Stoicism. But since you asked very nicely, I will answer it. So yeah, Stoicism was. I think John talked about it in his Meaning Crisis series, so you can refer to that. I think it was episode 20 or something like that. It was an ancient philosophy that started in ancient Greece and then migrated to ancient Rome. And it actually started in it's like the Stoa Pocaili. It was a painted porch. That's how they got the name. They were hanging out at the Stoa, and that's how they got the name, the Stoics. And Zeno was the original Stoic. But they're known more. They had like their whole cosmology, they had their whole kind of philosophy, but they're known today for the kind of the three Roman Stoics: Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus. And because they really put emphasis on ethics, the Stoic ethics, and it maps over like beautifully to a lot of psychological principles today. And I guess the axiomatic core of Stoicism is what they call live in accordance with nature. And how to do that is you follow the cardinal virtues: prudence, practical reason, courage, temperance, and justice. And if you double click on the practical reason, they have this, I would call them lived heuristics, like focus on what's in your control, the dichotomy of control. Radically focus on what's in your control, and do not concern yourself with what's not in your control. More fat day, love thy fate, voluntary hardship, like lean into obstacles. They have this famous line, the obstacle is the way. So I don't know if I did justice explaining Stoicism, but that's it in a nutshell. It's known to be like hyper practical. When I took philosophy in university, they didn't discuss Stoicism at all because it was too practical. They just had like one mention in like the 101 class. A lot of people, like from the group that I was running in Toronto, people who tend to work or operate in environments with high uncertainty, like military, doctors, entrepreneurs, they tend to gravitate towards Stoicism because they're like, I'm already doing this philosophy. This is just putting a name to it. So that, I think, encapsulates what Stoicism is. And I'm a little bit like, I guess I'm a little bit a weird Stoic, if you read some of my journals and writings, but that's sort of the core of it.
Actually, that's the question I was going to ask next that you've just brought up. I think I've seen you describe yourself as an unconventional Stoic. So, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, maybe it's like a sloppy Stoic. Maybe that's a little bit better. Someone who is not always congruent with principles. That's not true. That's not true. Let me think. I guess like the proselytizers of Stoicism, they call them the modern Stoicism movement, and guys like Donald Robinson, Massimo Taguchi, Ryan Holiday, they don't really kind of play in the sandbox that a lot of us play in with metamodernism, the meaning crisis, Game B. And so I guess I'm like, I have a foot and strong resonance in this world, and then I have a foot in the Stoic world too. But most people who talk or write about Stoicism have no idea what's going on here. So I guess that's why I'm sort of like the black sheep of the modern Stoic community, because they don't know what the fuck I'm talking about half the time when I'm talking about like, Game B or meaning crisis and stuff like that. So that's why I kind of like self-describe myself as a little bit of a Stoic weirdo. But yeah, and then the one thing too, I'll say this is that there's like a lowercase Stoicism or like the dictionary definition of Stoicism, where you like repress your emotions. You don't share what's really bothering you. And then there's like Stoicism, the uppercase Stoicism, which is the actual philosophy of it. And a lot of people have this misunderstanding. I think it's very fair why they have this, is that, Stoics are these emotionless creatures that, like they don't express anything. But it's like, if you read journals or if you interact with me, I'm like a fucking emotional basket case. I'm just articulating what I feel is most alive for me. And these conversational modalities that, John and then Guy has developed, circling, it's all about that. And I think what's really beautiful about Stoicism is there's something called cognitive diffusion that acceptance commitment therapy talks about. It's basically like creating distance between you and your emotional realities, so you don't get like enmeshed with them, so you're not hijacked by them, so you're not reacting from them. And Stoicism is a beautiful operating system if you follow it loyally, to create that cognitive diffusion. But that's just step one, in my opinion. Step two is like turning around, looking at the emotions, and then building a relationship with them, learning from them. What are they trying to tell you? Treat them as friends giving you advice. And friends don't always give the best advice, but you can learn something from them. So that's sort of stoicism that I like to talk about and do.
And so if someone wanted to start following, becoming more of a Stoic, do they need to do thousands of hours of research, of reading everyone from Marcus Aurelius to Zeno and beyond, or what would you suggest to them if they wanted to start applying this in their day-to-day life?
You gotta take a cold shower, 100 cold showers, and whip yourself while you do it. And then while you, no, yeah, like I don't really care about identifying or calling myself a Stoic, but if you gravitate towards anything I said, or the Stoic meme, or the Stoic philosophy, I definitely recommend reading Epictetus, his handbook. Read Marcus Aurelius' Meditation, read Seneca, read the big three Stoics. You can read some entry-level guys like Ryan Holiday's good. So just read up on Stoicism. It's not that difficult. The kind of the summary I gave is basically what they're going to say, maybe with some more nuance. And the thing that I kind of like about Stoicism is there's different techniques of how to practice it. Like Donald Robinson, he has an exercise called the view from above. And John, actually, when the Stoic conference I had in September, I don't know if you were there, Brett, but in September I had a Stoic conference. John was there, and he talked about the view from above, and it was a really, really awesome conversation. And then Donald actually did the exercise afterward. And it's just basically kind of doing a visualization where you picture yourself going above yourself, going above the world, and then kind of giving yourself some distance from it, so you have that perspective. And they have exercises like voluntary hardship, where you take cold showers. I used to take cold showers every day. I kind of stopped. Actually, it's really hot, so I should take them. They're kind of easy right now. And then like daily meditations, writing to yourself every day, like I do. I write to myself every day. I've been doing it for over 100 days now, since COVID happened. So they have various exercises to kind of follow, but it is there's no regimen. There's no the lineage was broken. It's not like some lineages of Buddhism, Orthodox Christianity, where you can kind of see how they practice and you have mentors and there's a whole system there. No, they don't have that. A lot of these modern authors are just kind of guessing how they practice, like, the view from above, journaling and stuff like that. Pierre Hadot is really great for this. But this is why I kind of like Stoicism, because you get to be a little entrepreneurial there. You can kind of see, take that kind of that skeleton philosophy, reinvent it.
So it's not terribly dogmatic these days.
Exactly. There might be some people who are dogmatic about it, but it's like there's no agreement of how it should be practiced, or how it was practiced even.
So yeah, you mentioned you journal, and I came across your letters or on what's the site, letter.wiki. Is that your
Right.
Is that the journal you're talking about, or do you do that and you also have your own private journal as well?
Yeah, that's where I started out. I did it for like 94 days there, and then I went over to Substack, and that's where they are right now.
So you're not just journaling; you're journaling for everyone. You're putting it out there. These aren't your private journals. You want people to see.
Yes, but I'm really trying to write to myself doing it, which is kind of like a little bit weird because other people are reading it. I don't know who exactly is reading it, but I do get myself in a state where I am writing to myself in order to remind myself of these truths that I hold.
And what? So you've done this now for 100 days. Have you noticed any transformative effects in yourself from doing this? What has it afforded you, would you say, over the past few months?
Yeah, it was really good, man. It's really, really been good. It's actually my favorite part of the day, waking up, getting an espresso, just pumping up the journal. And it's an exercise to just be radically truthful too. That's what I find. Because that's what the Stoics and a lot of other people believe, is that the bedrock of philosophy, before you get into all the nitty gritties, is the capacity to be truthful, mapping over your word to what you believe to be true in reality. And this is just another form of that. and it helps slow down my thinking, and it helps process like the emotional realities, the pains, the hurts, the confusions that I'm going through. So it's been really, really helpful to do that. And I've been privately journaling. Like I have probably over like 100,000 hours of private journaling. I used to do like the artist way, like the morning pages exercises. You just kind of just write to yourself free association style in the morning. That really helps kind of processing. It's like circling. What I really like about circling is you're mapping your words to your reality, your felt sense reality. And so you can kind of like separate what your thoughts are, what your story, your narrative is, to the emotional reality that is coming up. So you're not kind of conflating the two. And journaling really helps with that. I've been doing it privately for years. I just deleted them right after, just to have no record. So just like really raw. And so that kind of that spirit, that practice of writing raw to myself, I'm carrying it over into public format, shifting a little bit because I'm having kind of a little bit of impression management, but with my meta awareness, I'm aware of that impression management, so it has kind of an interesting interaction.
Well, I was wondering, do you find yourself being a little less radically honest when it's out there? I mean, there are things probably we don't want to show to other people. Has that shifted from your private writing to your public writing?
No, not really. Because I'm still, I would say, I'm just as honest, but I'm selective about what I'm honest about.
Right.
I'm using my discernment. Like, okay, this is like not prudent to be honest about this thing. But if I am going to speak about something, I'm going to kind of put myself to my edge of it. And if I find like there's a barrier there, like, oh, what's going on here, then I can explore that.
So you talk a lot about the meaning crisis, and you have this great white paper that you did a couple of years ago with who did you wrote it with? Oh, I had
Connor Barnes.
Yes, with Connor, and you talk about 6 different crises, and I'll try to post I'll post a link in a bit to in the event text at the end of this to this white paper. So this you wrote in 2018, and you talk about 6 different crises, including the meaning crisis, and you have the reality crisis, the belonging crisis, the proximity crisis, the sobriety crisis, and the warfare crisis. Now we focus obviously mostly on the meaning crisis. What does the meaning crisis mean to you? And I guess I would ask you, are you sort of on board with John's view of the meaning crisis, or do you diverge from him in any ways, or are you basically on the same page with John on the meaning crisis?
Yeah, like I would say I'm pretty, whatever, from what I know with John is out there, I'm pretty on the same page with him when it comes to the meaning crisis. I might not understand all of it, but it seems pretty congruent of it. And the paper came out before John did his YouTube series on the meaning crisis. And I think I came across a term reading John and Chris's zombie book. That I didn't know they coined it at the time. I just thought it was something that was in the air when we put it in this white paper.
Now in this white paper, and maybe you could talk a little bit about it, but you're careful not to give too many prescriptions at the end. I mean, a lot of it's sort of a description of what you witnessed going on with the left, right, with tribalism, with Trump, and all the different groups out there from the far left to the far right, and you make some suggestions in terms of sort of ecology of practice type suggestions. But do you see a way out from the meaning crisis? Or first, maybe give a brief description of how you see the meaning crisis and what you think we can do about it, and maybe where the Stoa fits into that.
Yeah, that's good. Where's the chat? How do I share things in this thing?
So right above the event hall recording, there's event text, and so you can put anything in there.
Oh, shit! Kira has a question to me about the Dark Stoa. Don't pick her. Okay, so the so for those of you, maybe I'll explain the white paper first, and then pivot to your meaning crisis question. So the original idea, if you see in the chat, there's like this spreadsheet, and in this spreadsheet there's a list of these mimetic tribes, and then some of them you might have heard of, like social justice activists or the social justice warriors, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, gender critical feminists, which are the TERFs, that's what they're called now. If you scroll down to the more reactionary tribes, you got Manosphere, Incel, alt-right, you got some conspiratorial tribes like QAnon, you got the more centrist tribes like intellectual dark web. And this was in 2018 if this was created today. Game B would be on here. Maybe John would even have his own tribe. I don't know what it would be called. So the idea is with this paper was to kind of present the culture war instead of like this kind of like this bipolar affair with left and right. If you watch Fox or CNN, that's what you're going to get. It's like a war between the left and the right. But we made an argument that the culture right now is a multipolar war. It's a war between these mimetic tribes, people who get kind of tribal, almost in an addictive sense, around certain ideas, certain memes that they share on these social media platforms. And there's no, if you kind of look at it, the alt-right and the alt-right are fighting against each other. Social justice activists are fighting against the TERFs. The dirtbag left is fighting against the social justice activists. Everyone's kind of really fighting against the social justice activists. But all these kind of tribes are fighting against themselves, and they're having these odd alliances. And so the idea was just to create the spreadsheet, and then we said, you know what, let's just fucking try to explain why this came about. And so we went through the meaning crisis and all this type of stuff. And I view this sort of white paper as like a psychoactive drug. When you kind of read it, when you kind of see the spreadsheet, like, oh shit, like if you're not aware of this stuff, like most people are probably aware of it in this space, but it was sort of like it jogs you out of your kind of like tribal warring reality tunnel. So that was sort of like the point of it. How I see Stoa in this, I like the idea of being the Switzerland of the culture war in a way. We're a place where we're not combatants, we're not like fighting like with memes on social media, but we're trying to figure out how to become embodied tribes. So move away from mimetic tribes and to become embodied tribes. And the part of the project is to seduce a lot of these mimetic tribalists to the Stoa or places like it, like this Discord, and learn how to become embodied through developing ecology of practices. And then I think, things like circling and all these different kind of meditative practices, breathwork practices really help with that. I don't know what the formula is for it. This is sort of like I'm in a cowboy discovering phase on it, but that's sort of the idea. Develop what I'm using the term wisdom gym and ecology of practices, and then have at least the capacity to become embodied tribes.
Well, so you mentioned Kira. So Kira, why don't you put your question to Peter?
I said, don't pick Kira. That was the request. All right, bring it on. Bring it.
Okay, so I've actually been wanting to reach out to you and ask you about this. So I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity. I can ask this question. Can you put some context around what prompted you to bring Pat Ryan onto the Stoa and give him a platform for his presentations and the Dark Stoa?
And maybe you can just explain what the Dark Stoa is.
Do you want to explain it, Kira, or do you want me to explain it?
I can give it a shot, and then you can fill in the blanks. So the Dark Stoa is a group that meets on Friday nights, and there's a guy, Pat Ryan. The tagline that has been given to him is the most dangerous man on the internet. I would say he is... What? You gave him that name?
I gave him that nickname, yeah.
And he essentially is giving his frame for the meaning crisis, for where he thinks the world is going, and it takes you to some very dark, twisted places. That's the best description I've got for it.
Yeah. So it's how he phrased it is existential ultra catastrophes, like exploring existential ultra catastrophes for the sole purpose of reframing them into sane pathways that you can navigate and you can have action and meaning from it. So that's sort of like the thing, and he's just like this wild man. He's a genius. He's incredibly intelligent. Not university educated. He's homegrown. He's a hacker. He was involved in culture war happenings, like putting Milo Yiannopoulos on the map, or at least he claims. So So he's just dangerous, kind of knowing the guy and putting him on the Stoa platform. How he got my radar, basically Jordan Hall emailed me and says, "Hey, do you know Patrick Ryan?" I'm like, "No." And then I sent me the website and I started reading about him. And I'm like, "Shit, if what this guy is saying is true, this is pretty fucked up and dark." Half the stuff I didn't understand, but I'm always intrigued by. I can kind of sniff out an original thinker. Like I'm always intrigued by one. Jordan Peterson was my therapist. I don't know if I mentioned that to you, but before he was my therapist. This is before he went on the culture war scene.
Wait. So you had John as your teacher and Peterson as your therapist.
Yes. It's a double whammy there.
Wow.
But before Jordan Peterson went culture war, warrior type mode, he was my therapist for about 2 years, but before that. He had like this indie rock, like intellectual cred about him, right? Like if you're into the intellectual space, like you're aware of him, but no one else knew about him. But you could tell he's a fucking original thinker, right? And so like I sniffed him out, like I got to know this guy. Same thing with John, right? John, original mind. I want to know him. Same thing with Pat Ryan, right? Basically, when I don't understand someone on first blush, and I can't kind of like categorize them into like one of those spreadsheet lines and like a mimetic tribe, there's someone's original thinker. So. Yeah, I got to know Pat. Jordan Hall put me on his radar. Read him, like, oh my God, invited him to my podcast. Had a bunch of conversations with him privately, and then maybe, despite my better judgment, I invited him on to do a session Friday nights, the Dark Stoa, and they've been very popular, very fun, very edgy. You can all check it on the YouTube channel, the Dark Stoa. It's hard to track, but it's probably best to start with the first one. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, Kira, but I really like the guy. He's dangerous, but I like him.
I guess maybe the follow-up question would be, how do you, now that you've gotten to know him, where would you put him? Because I had encountered him like a year and a half ago, and so when he started showing up on the Dark Stoa, I was like, okay, like he had been on my radar too for the same reason, and so I was just curious where he fits in your map now.
He definitely has a reactionary side to him, for sure, temperamentally, and there's he's into parapolitics, which is a more sophisticated way to saying conspiracies, from a very first principle approach. So there's that kind of like that constellation going on there. But he's also plugged into the Game B space. He knows Daniel Schmachtenberger, he knows Jordan Hall, he knows Jim Rutt, Peter Wang, he knows all those players. I don't think he's come across John yet. Talked to Alexander Bard. So yeah, he's just a very eclectic thinker, but he is more reactionary, at least temperamentally, I would say.
Thanks.
On the subject of the Dark Stoa, you write about your daemon. Is that, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you mean by that and the importance of that concept?
Yeah. So the daemon or the daimon, however you want to pronounce it, I don't know. I got it from like Socrates. Essentially, he said that his daemon is his guiding spirit. And the way I hold it, if you want to like articulate it in secular terms, it's like a certain quality of intuition that says go here, and you don't know why it's saying go here. But when you listen to it, there's like no guarantee either if you go there. It's like, oh, this is going to be a victory. But if you go there, like delicious things happen. So, for example, like me wanting to see Peterson as a client, me befriending John, me starting the podcast, me starting the Stoa, me writing that white paper, all these are like daemon kind of like impulses. They didn't come from first principle thinking. They got like the prudence check after the fact, but what kind of like nudged me there was a certain quality of intuition that was quite different than other intuitions. It's not like a hedonistic thing. It's not like desire to dominate or anything like that. So that's how I personally hold the daemon. And then the Greeks, they had something called eudaimonia, which a lot of modernists translate into happiness. But if you just unpack the word, it means being in right relationship with your daemon, being in right relationship with that guiding spirit, that quality of intuition. But yeah, that's how I hold the daemon. And then I imagine you I think you created this Discord, Brett, and you're organizing as a passion project. I imagine there's some daemonic kind of energy going on there.
Yeah, as you were describing it, it felt very similar to what was going on with me. Well, as I was listening to John's Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, and the instinct that there's something important going on here that I don't know if it'll work, but I think there's something worth trying and I wanted to be a part of it to help make it happen.
Yeah.
So now, of course, would you say? I mean, our instincts can lead us in the wrong direction too. Would you say that's different than our daemon? That the daemon is the good instincts, but then there's the not so good instincts. And how do you tell the difference? Then how do you tell when it's your daemon versus leading you in the wrong direction?
Leading you astray, right? Yeah. I can just speak for myself. When I sort of live in such a way where I'm listening and following this kind of intuitive instinct, it usually leads to good places. But you can interpret it, what it's telling you, and you can do. Your ego can get in the way. You can have narcissistic qualities and kind of like bastardize like the interpretation of what those words are trying to tell you or where to go, tell you where to go. And this is why I think it's like having an ecology of practices where you can practice reasoning. You do your syllogisms. You practice how to reason well. You meditate. You do breath work. You have good friends that can keep you in check. So you're in dialogos with them. So yeah, I think if you're just running with this kind of energy by itself without kind of getting help from these other kind of psychotechnologies, then it could lead you astray for sure.
Well, you've mentioned a bit about your ecology of practices. So you mentioned circling, I think meditation practices. What is your ecology of practices?
Drinking espressos, too many espressos. That's one. Yeah. Let's see. So, waking up early, doing journaling, taking cold showers, fitness exercises, and I would say kind of conversation modalities like circling with close friends, and then I would say some breathwork exercises. I haven't been doing that much lately. That's pretty much it right now. I want to ramp it up and be a little more sophisticated with it. And a part of this journey of the Stoa is investigating these and having sort of how the Stoa as a psychotechnology incubator where people can kind of test out different practices that can be, recorded on a Zoom channel and that could be replicated and scaled up.
Mark, you have a question.
Yeah, Peter, I was wondering about, you're talking about the Stoa as a place to sort of explore and go into detail with these ecologies of practices. And I was curious as to what those were and if you're sort of taking any ecologies from Stoicism, just because I'm unfamiliar with, what they had in terms of ecologies of practice, right? It seems to be all mind stuff. And how that plays into your mission with the Stoa.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, as I mentioned to Brett earlier, that the modern Stoic authors, they teased out. First of all, the Stoic text, like I think 90% of them went missing. So we don't really know much about like a lot of the details and nitty gritty of the Stoics, and as a lineage is dead. Like there was no like living Stoics that kind of like existed from ancient Rome to now. So the ecology of practices that a lot of the modern Stoics mention, like voluntary hardship, the journaling, the view from above, they're just sort of teasing them out of the text, and there's not like a consensus or a complete agreement of what they are. So I'm not really concerned about that and kind of bringing that forth to the Stoa. And it's sort of a bait and switch. Like the Stoa is stewarded or run by a Stoic, but like the majority of our events, like 99% of them are not about Stoicism. I don't look forward to talking about Stoicism. That being said, how to discover an ecology of practices within the Wisdom Gym. Right now, I'm just being a total cowboy, to be quite frank about it. I'm just listening to my daemon, what kind of practices I want to experiment and test out and want to have reoccurring in the gym. And people are reaching out to me, wanting to come. Ray Bach, who did collective presencing, she invented that practice, and it's like a circling-esque practice, a we-space type practice. She comes in every Friday and does that. We have a few other we-space practitioners coming in. I don't know if people are familiar with we-space, but it's the integral theory term for these authentic conversational modalities that help with coherence. So yeah, a lot of people are reaching out to me to come in the STOA. So right now I'm just listening and experimenting. But my hope is, I'm an adjunct researcher at John's Wisdom and Consciousness Studies Lab as well. And the hope is once we do all these experimentations, we can actually do legitimate studies on this.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so you're doing the experimentation as well, and this is a way to experiment sort of in the real world while involving other people.
Yeah, 100%. Like, there's a lot of people that just kind of like have this ready-made curriculum. Like, well, you do this, right? Like, come on. Like, right now, I think we need to just practice and experiment wildly in this space. And I kind of like this term Vince Horn came up with, the Senga. That's what you guys call it right here. You have a Senga section, right?
Yes.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yes.
Yeah, he called it like the meta Senga. That there needs to be a meta Senga. And someone said, oh, the Stoa is a good example of a meta Senga. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? So I looked it up. Vince Horn coined it. And essentially a place where kind of multiple ecology of practices can exist. So you can have like, a DIY approach to ecology of practices where, like, I imagine like the Stoa or something like it, they could have like hundreds of different psychotechnologies coexisting in this wisdom gym. And then people can kind of come in and experiment which ecology works for them. And it might be different ecologies that work. Like the best ecology of the practice might be the one that gets you the next. So I don't think we should focus on solidifying just one, getting that one right, just kind of experimenting. And I think more is the merrier right now, so we can kind of test the different combinations.
Dave, you had a question.
Oh, that was not a fully serious question, but kind of is. I mean, I also have a daemon, I would say, from
Nice.
15 years. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah. So Peter, nice to see you here. Yeah, and I guess it's just interesting. What is a daemon? Where does it come from? How do you conceptualize it? That's something to think about. For me, has been, and I think it's interesting. But certainly, I would say that I have a daemon which, like Socrates, it stops you doing something that you're about to do. As a kind of felt sensation in sort of my head area. Anyway, that's quite personal, but yeah. So that's not really a question there, but I'm just.
Well, your question was how can your daemon be more intelligent than you?
That was my little throwaway question in the chat. So yeah, you're happy to go on that. But basically, I just want to say thank you, Peter, though it is amazing. Unfortunately, time zones mean I can't participate, which is a real shame. I'm hoping Rebel Wisdom will be something maybe even slightly similar.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder whether Patrick, whether you can help make that happen. So if you want to, talk about that or the daemon, please do.
Yeah, like I saw you looked at the chat. You said that Socrates, his daemon, said that like told him things not to do, which is true. Socrates' daemon said, told him not to do things. Where the way I'm holding it is telling me to do things, more or less than not telling me to do things. To answer your question about how is it more intelligent than you, I don't know. I would like to source the group for any suggestions on that one. And Rebel Wisdom does. I used to be the community manager briefly for Rebel Wisdom, and they are also working on a wisdom gym. So I really love seeing these different communities pop up, like this one, Rebel Wisdom, the Emerge Network, or the STOA. They're doing quite similar things, and it's like, let's put our money where our mouth is. Are we going to practice these principles of the Game Beat principles of collaboration, coordination, stuff like that? And I think we can, and that's why I'm here.
Topher, you had a question. Are you there, Topher, or do you want me to read it for you? All right. I will read it for Topher. Hi, Peter. We actually have a mutual friend named Narian. Hopefully we cross paths sometime soon. My question would be, and forgive me if this is explicitly included in your paper, does the way the mimetic tribes, meme plexes, are struggling for territory online remind you of the way the brain develops, where circuits gradually build through a positive feedback reinforcement process?
I never really thought about that. It's an interesting comparison. I do like the idea of kind of like the internet, the interconnected aspects of the hardware aspect is sort of like the brain that is forming, and then the memes that are flowing through it are the noosphere, the collective mind is sort of the mind of our collective. And currently, we're like collectively. The whole argument of the Culture War 2.0 paper was like we're in the collective state of like schizophrenia, of all these different kind of realities hitting each other. But maybe schizophrenia is the wrong way to look at it. Maybe we're just like a 4-month baby at this point, trying to figure out what is what. So I do like these brain-mind analogies, but I'll leave that to someone else to kind of figure out to get right.
And you've talked about your experimentation. I saw that you've been experimenting with what you've called the communitas prayer. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, just basically something I made up with my mentor, Andrew Taggart. So Andrew Taggart, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. He had a conversation with Guy and a few other people in this space. He's a practical philosopher. I call him like the Socrates of the internet. And during many of my dark night of the souls, I reached out to him and we had philosophical conversations. And when the Stoa first started, we kind of leaned on our experience, experimenting with all these different space, conversational modality technologies, and then we did something called the Communitas Prayer. And we just kind of took some of the enabling constraints from like circling these different kind of practices and created our own. And someone was in the hot seat. They kind of spoke on the issue that was most existentially salient for them for a brief time, and then the collective group gave support, just kind of spoke what wanted to be spoken, in kind of like the demonic way, and it was quite beautiful. Some kind of didn't land, some were really great, but that was the experiment of doing a Communitas prayer. And oddly enough, a lot of people that were practitioners in WeSpace came across the Stoa because we started putting that out there. So we call it the Communitas Invitation. So I guess we invited people who are actually practicing this stuff to come find the Stoa, which is quite cool.
Pedro, you have a question.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Hi, Peter. You referred breath work as one of the practices you do. And my question is, what is the contribution you expect from it? Is it to induce a calm mind state or an activated one? What is its place in the Stoic mindset?
I'm curious, have you ever done breath work or Wim Hof method or anything like that?
I have never done it.
So this was, I think, the plug. Yeah, at the Stoa, we have something called the Stoic breath. It's 3 times a week, and they're all in the morning too. So if you're in Europe, I imagine you can get it. Next one, I think, is Sunday at 10 a.m. And this is a Wim Hof trainer. He was trained under Wim Hof, and he's basically doing Wim Hof breath work, a little bit modifications on it with kind of a Stoic framing. And I'm not too educated on all the benefits of it, but if you experiment with it, it's quite awesome. It really makes you feel alive. It puts you in your body, and it's just focusing on the breath to bring that fire in the belly. So I recommend experimenting with it and reading up on it.
Do you meditate as well? Oh,
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, you were just thinking.
Thank you for your actually. I felt the invite to participate, so I'm gonna look forward to it.
Cool, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And no, I don't meditate, Brett.
You could join us in the mornings for our meditation sangha, where we meditate with John's course. Well, you said you had some questions for us. Did you want to throw out a few?
Yeah. So maybe just like how'd you start? Like maybe just the basics right now. Like how'd you start? How much members you have? And kind of like Yeah, what would you be your elevator pitch for this place? Because I popped in twice and had a look around. I'm not familiar with Discord, so I just felt like overwhelmed. But and you can give me like an elevator pitch of what's happening here.
Sure. So the way we started was, well, I came across some guys, one guy who had met on Twitter, and he introduced me to some guys he was working with. One is Tyler, he was here now, but I think he logged off now. He's our admin, and this guy John Buck, and they were doing a podcast, weekly YouTube podcast on the Beverly channel, going through John's Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. So they were just at week 7 when I met them, and I started doing this weekly podcast with them where we watched an episode or 2 or 3 and we discussed it every week. So going through it, and at the end we interviewed John, and so got to ask him some questions. And after that, I'd been thinking about this for a while. How could I be involved? It seemed like an important project, and pitched this Discord. I've been involved with a bunch of Discord, and I thought, this guy needs a Discord. This community needs a Discord. So he loved the idea, and we started it. So we started it in mid to the end of April. I think April 23rd. We've grown. We've got over 1,000 members now. Now, of course, not everyone. Some people join Discord and then they never come back. But we have a pretty active community. So we have a big focus on ecology of practices. So a number of us meet in the morning for meditation. We've started introducing yoga before that. We just started actually this week running John's Dialogos practice. We've got one of our members has been leading Tai Chi. So we do the movement practice with John as well as the meditation. We're experimenting with rituals, sort of secularized rituals and embodiment rituals. So just like you, sort of experimenting in the space, trying to come up with new rituals. We have a bunch of different so there are a lot of people who focus on voice, and there are other people who focus on text. We've got a bunch of people who are working on sort of laying out the religion that's not a religion, what it might look like. They have a document that's pinned in one of those threads that's sort of starting to map it out. So we bring a lot of John's guests from the Voices with Vervecchi on. So following a Voices with Vervecchi, I'll invite the guest here, and we do a Q&A similar to this. So sort of this bridge between what John's doing on the YouTube channel and the community. So really, we're trying to build. Like, my goal is to build a community around this Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, to help people do these, to put in place an ecology of practices, to help support each other, help people maintain these practices, and figure out each of our own ways out of this out of the meaning crisis, and as well as maybe, ideally it would be a hub for the various communities that are working around Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. Groups like yours, Rafe Kelly, there's Jordan Hall. There's all sorts of different communities, like you've said, that have been developing. I'd love to see this sort of as a place where people can intermingle and discuss ideas, in real time, and share ideas and collaborate and communicate, and really, work on Dialogos. And so, there's I'll stop there. That's the elevator pitch.
Cool. And what's the mechanism like to have a practice go into your ecology of practices? Is someone recommended? Is there like to get sign off somewhere? Like, how does that work?
Well, I mean, we're taking a lot of guidance from John. A lot of so the meditation we're mostly following his, but just like you said, it's not a dogmatic practice. So we say, if you have your own meditation practice, for example, do that. There's just something about, we'll meditate together and then we'll talk about it afterwards. With things like yoga and Tai Chi and all that, we're sort of experimenting. With yoga, we're experimenting with different, just YouTube videos for now. Just finding ones, beginner yoga videos for people to do. With the Dialogos, we've sort of taken John's, the one, the one, similar to what John did on yours, and he talked about with Guy Senstock. So this protocol, the 4-person protocol, So we're, but it's more about encouraging people to have an ecology of practice. For example, we've been doing group Lectio Divina, which John introduced in Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, and in his meditation series, he taught sort of a version of Lectio Divina. This sort of meditative embodiment style reading that we've been doing as a group. We've got. We have people doing circling type, authentic relating type events as well. So basically trying to hit all of the bases. We're experimenting with ecstatic dance, which I think I've seen you guys doing on your group as well. So I think there's probably a lot of overlap in the. I've noticed when I've looked at your list, a lot of things you're doing are similar to things we're doing, but different takes on them, which is probably a good contrast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. And I'm glad that John has a home now, or his ideas have a home now here, because a lot of people were touching on it, like Red Wisdom, Future Thinkers, myself. But it's good that his kind of ideas can be fully explored here with a community that actually watched all 50 videos, which is a feat in itself. It's a rite of passage. That's a psychotechnology, watching John's 50th lectures.
Yeah, for sure. And there is a group that is going through on Sundays, going through all the lectures. Yoshio, you have a question.
Hey, yeah, thanks.
Okay,
Hi,
good.
Peter.
Good. We'll talk about it after.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Brett was mentioning about the differences or the similarities about what's going on here, and just as an observer, having participated in a bunch of Stoa events previously, and I think what I've realized about the Stoa is there's something specifically sacred in the way that it's shrined up in a Zoom call. It has a specific time. Nobody, you don't know ahead of the Zoom call who's gonna be in there as part of the audience, and then boom, you're in. It's very intense, and then it's over, and then you're out, and there's no reception to mingle with the audience. And I don't mean it as a criticism, but I think one of the reasons for things like the Discord to emerge is partly in response for this this feeling of wanting to commune with the community, the audience, in various ways, both formally by being able to rehearse or practice or develop these psychotechnologies or these ecology practices, but also just to shoot the shit and just to figure out who we are, so I guess that's part of just a comment, but also to pose a question to maybe both of you guys is, are there specific outcomes that you guys are noticing based on the structure of the technology? For example, Peter, you mentioned that you had a Stoic group in Toronto. You guys met face to face. Is there anything specifically different about what the Stoa platform on Zoom is affording? Is there something that you're hacking in the Zoom feature that it's affording you something? And likewise to Brett, is there something about the Discord format, the structure of it, that is affording something particular that we're after? And I'm assuming that there's a difference between Zoom and Discord, and I keep wanting to know, what is that difference, and so thanks.
This guy asks so much good questions. I love your sort of when it comes to the Stoa. Want me to go first, Brett? With this
Sure.
one?
I mean, with Discord, and one thing, first that distinguishes Discord from, say, Twitter or Facebook is the fact that there's video and voice seamless with the chatting, and I think that it makes it a little more personal, a little more real. That you're not just chatting. It's easy to get fairly toxic, when all you're doing is talking through text. But once you add video and voice, it makes the other person much more real, and that's similar to Zoom. The fact that people can go in and out of Discord is something I really like. You've got, there's a bunch of different Discords too. You've got the Coffee House Discord, you've got Brett Weinstein's Discord. There's a lot of overlap, so people can sort of see what they want. They can sort of be in a similar area, and they can see what's going on in their Discords and come in and out. And you can just pop on. One advantage Discord has over say Zoom is you've got a lot more of the casual conversations that just pop up, where people just want to have a conversation, so they pop into a voice channel and just talk. Where Zoom is more you have to have a planned event with an invite and whatnot. But Zoom is great. For example, for doing things like Dialogos, where you can just have all your people and then divide them into however many rooms you want with a click of a button. That's a big advantage that Zoom has over Discord. It's a lot harder. You really have to just manually create a bunch of rooms to do that here on Discord. And we've used Zoom too sometimes. So we sort of meet here and then sometimes move to Zoom. So depending on what we're doing.
So I'll answer this question. Then have to go. But I'll sidestep the Zoom Discord thing. But I think I'll go answer the question, the spirit of what you're trying to get at there. So when I started the Stoa, I had a policy, like no social media. There's no Discord, no Facebook, no Reddit. Disabled all the YouTube comments. Throughout the Q&A, the podcast, they got rid of everything. It's just all in the Zoom channel, so people can private message. And there is, like you were gesturing towards, there's kind of like almost like a sacred quality. There's kind of like a weird silence, but there's maybe that lack of kind of like shooting the shit element that Discord could afford. And maybe it's the wrong move. Maybe I will start a Discord eventually and do things like that. But there's a distrust I have towards it, these type of formats, in the sense that it can turn into a shit show. It can get mimetically hijacked by certain mimetic tribes. You see that in the Game B forums on Facebook. And maybe this one is protected because it has good stewardship, or it's like so localized around John stuff, you're only going to get geeky super users that like know about the thing, so it may be cool here. But the Stoa is much broader in its scope, and especially the project of mimetic mediation, where we're inviting like queer anarchists to like, Jack Murphy to Pat Ryan. Like we have a slew of people come in here at the Stoa, and then they're going to bring their audiences in. And if when I have just the thought of having a space on it, I just think it will get kind of mimetically messy, and with that cultural noise will come in, especially if the project is mimetic mediation. So I've been hesitant about doing it so far, mainly for that reason. That's the reason why I disabled all the comments. And also another tyranny of structuralistness. There's this term as a feminist term where it can, like, groupthink can just hijack a space. And so I'm cautious about having that there, even though there's like so much benefits, like these things are organically emerging. But with the Stoa, there's so much activities, and there's so much kind of like communities bursting out of it, like Metagame Mastermind. They have their own Slack group, other campfires emerging from it. That's sort of the idea of the space, is that it's kind of like this weird entity that things can be born from it, but it doesn't have any kind of focalized point there, especially on social media. So I don't know if that answered your question. That's currently my thought on the matter, and I could be totally wrong. It could be a mistaken approach to it, but I'm not sold on having a platform for the Stoa on Discord or Slack or anything like that yet.
Did you have a follow-up, Yoshi?
Oh, yeah, no, that's totally fair. Yeah, I appreciate that response. Thanks.
Thanks, man. That's a good question.
Peter, I know you've got to get going. Thank you so much for coming by. This has been great. This is a great conversation. I hope this is the start of many conversations, and I'd love to talk with you more about how we can work with you and you can work with us. And I think, again, there's a lot of overlap in what we're doing, obviously, so our communities probably have a lot in common. And I know Kira, for example, is a member of both our communities, so there's a lot of overlap. So I think we can work together.
Every time I see that sun in the background, I get excited in the Zoom room. So yeah, you guys are lucky. Yeah, and man, and I just want to tip my hat off for you, Brett, and everyone here for building such a great community. It seems quite strong, and like I said, I think it's really important that John has a community foundation for his ideas so that it can flourish, because they are like not the most accessible sometimes to a lot of people, because he uses all these words. So having a community that can kind of like educate people on it and onboard them, I think is going to be quite helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, my hat's off to you.
And of course, anyone from your community is welcome to hang out here. So if they want a place to shoot the shit a bit, and we've tried to maintain a non-toxic atmosphere, and we're very attuned to that. So that's so that's something I think we've been pretty lucky not to have too much of that here. So yeah, we'd love to have those people there. And thank you everyone for the great questions as always, and for being here. Remember, we have a calendar in the announcements, pinned in the announcements channel is a link to our Google Calendar, and we also have our YouTube channel, the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord. So please join and subscribe. This Q&A will be up as with every other Q&A, so if you miss one, you can go back, and please like and subscribe. So thanks everyone for being here, and thanks again, Peter. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you, Brett. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you for being here.